على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 102, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you who have attained to faith, be God conscious with the care which due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and die not except in a state of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in Surah Al-Qiyamah, لا أقسم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. Nay, call to witness the day of resurrection, but nay, I call to witness the accusing voice of man's or humans' own conscience. So we have, as described in Quran and explained to us in the Hadith, three types of nafs, three types of souls. In nafs al-lawama, which is the one that we're going to talk about today regarding self-refinement or self-accountability. And nafs al-lawama is the nafs that is the guilty soul, the soul that is conscious when it makes a mistake, it realizes it made a mistake and trying to come back to the straight path. And nafs al-ammara is the evil self. We are created to do good and evil. And every now and then, especially when we are put in with times of anger, or we are surrounded with evil people or people who are indulged in sins, and we keep hanging out with them, it becomes natural for us to do our evil self to kick in. So that's why we try to avoid being around bad people, so that to avoid avoid the trigger of our evil self. And the last type of soul is the nafs al-mutma'inna, which is explained in Surah Al-Fajr, and that's the nafs or the soul that is at tranquility. It's happy, it's satisfied with what it's doing right now, and it knows. Because of that tranquility it knows, inshallah, it's eventually gonna go to heaven. But today our focus is gonna be on self-refinement, self-accountability, which means we're gonna focus on a nafs al-lawama, the nafs or the soul that is conscious. When it makes a mistake, it wanna come back to the straight path. So the lesson after blaming ourselves from committing a sin or a mistake is self-refinement. So we have to be accountable to ourselves. And there are two things that can cause our destruction. It can be our destruction in this life, and it can be our destruction in this life and the life hereafter. But the two things that will cause our destruction is we do not have self-refinement in ourselves. We do not have self-accountability to ourselves, and we follow or indulge in our desires all the times. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam said, Al-kayyisu man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut wal-ajizu man ittaba'a nafsahu hawaha wa tamanna ala Allah. The wise person is the one who reproaches himself. He has self-accountability and does for what's after death, and the powerless and the loser is the one who follows his desires and wish to Allah. All our scholars, they explain to us that this hadith is a strong indication that we need to have self-accountability and be harsh on ourselves when we realize we made a mistake. Harsh ourselves, I don't mean beat ourselves or do harm to ourselves, but we really need to be honest with ourselves. That's what they meant. Al-Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab, Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, said, حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا وتزينوا للعرض الأكبر وإنما يخف الحساب يوم القيامة على من حاسب نفسه في الدنيا. He said, call yourselves to account before you yourself are called to it. When is that going to happen? That will happen starting when we are in the grave. And weigh your deeds before the day when they shall be weighed for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us in the Quran and through Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and our predecessors to be accountable for everything that we do ourselves. Don't wait for others to tell us the mistakes that we've done. Realize it ourselves. So fear Allah as He should be feared. For it is the fear of Allah that makes things easy for one and prevents evil and undesirable things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has perfected this religion for us and completed His favors upon us, and He has chosen Islam to be our religion. And the best gift He gave us is the gift of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Islam is a religion that has its basic principles deeply rooted and strongly fortified. It enjoins all noble traits and forbids all corrupt deeds. It teaches that humans' elevation lies in being an observant Muslim. Before I go and explain the observant Muslim, I need to explain first the component of being an observant Muslim. Because people confuse a religious Muslim and the observant Muslim. Not every religious Muslim is an observant Muslim, and I'll explain in a minute. But every observant Muslim is a religious Muslim. Being an observant Muslim has three components. Being religious, watching your faith level. The faith level is always either up or down. It's never steady. If it's steady, you're dead. It can't be, nobody can come and convince me or any of the scholars or me as a student that my faith level is steady. There is no such a thing as faith level as steady. You're dead then. It's either up or it's either down. It's two triggers. It's either on or off. Now, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us there will be times where our faith level is down, especially when we have problems or we lost loved ones or we lost our jobs or things happen in life that our faith level go down, but we manage to come back up. So we always have, that's why we're talking about self-accountability, is how to bring ourselves back up. So one is being religious, two is monitoring our faith level to be up all the time, and the third thing is honorable morals. So now some people come, well, isn't it every religious person have honorable morals? Well, no, just like we hear stories on the news about popes or priests committing, child pedophiles or some sort of rapes in their churches, we have the same issues in our mosques. Back home, we hear of these stories. We hear some of them over here even. You go to Queens or Brooklyn, you find out Muslims who are called Hajis. They call them, but this is their nickname, Hajj and the name. They selling pork and liquor. So they are religious, you cannot deny they are not religious, but it's not necessarily you can say they have honorable morals or high level of faith, because if they do, they will not be selling pork or liquor and these kind of things. So not every religious person has a high level of faith or honorable moral necessarily. But when I say an observant Muslim has all these three qualifications. He's religious, he or she is religious, always maintaining high level or refining themselves and maintaining their faith, and attain to honorable morals. So self-refinement enlivens our hearts and leads us to have commendable characters. Characters have limits. If we overstep our characters, it becomes hostile, and if we fall short on it, it becomes, that's when we start making mistakes and becomes shameful and defect. So though the human self that is naturally inclined to evil finds excuses for whatever has passed and nurses hopes for whatever is left, The best among the wise people is the one who reproaches himself most. Whoever understands this life will strive to attain the best thereof. And that's what our scholars teach us. So real enjoyment of this world and this life is only achieved by being steadfast and firm in matters of one's religion. And I don't mean by that do not enjoy life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran to take our share in life. But we always have to make that balance between the rights of others or enjoying life and the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and the best thing in this life and the best treasure that we have in this life is to have the fruit of this life is to have knowledge and good deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us to give ourselves time always to supplicate and make dua. And to give time to our Lord, our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to call ourselves to account and put our eyes and tongue under control. It's common, especially when it comes to times of summer. We go on vacations and we see things. I mean, it's considered haram, but it's right there in front of you. You need to learn how to lower your gaze and control your whims. Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on his soul, also teaches us, do not take any knowledge from a self-glorifying person. He teaches us the only way for us to be able to self-refine ourselves is to avoid those people who brag all the time about themselves. They are arrogant and then we become arrogant, and an arrogant person will never be able to self-refine himself or herself. The examination of one's conscience and calling oneself to account with intelligence has immense benefits. Among these benefits are that a person who does this will discover the weakness and defects as well as strengths and good deeds and points of excellence. This is the best way for you to understand yourself. When you start admitting to yourself the mistakes that you did and be truthful to yourself, you will understand your weakness and your strength. Imam Hassan al-Basri, may Allah have mercy on his soul, teaches the true believer is a guardian of his oneself and continuously call his soul to account for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reckoning of the day of resurrection will only be difficult for those who live the life of this world without ever examining their conscience and calling themselves to account. And then he explained that the essence of self-examination is when a believer pauses after having performed a deed, whether it's good or bad. He pauses or she pauses and notices that he is negligent in a matter and then addresses himself saying, what did I intend with this deed? I swear by Allah, this is Imam al-Hassan al-Basri, that I will not be excused for it. I swear by Allah that I will never do it again, inshallah. And this is how our scholars, our predecessors, taught us how to monitor and be accountable to ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter 59, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. He's telling us directly, O you believe, be God conscious and let every soul look to what it has put forth for tomorrow. He's telling us to self-monitor ourselves and fear Allah or be God conscious. For Allah indeed is acquainted with what you do. And if you don't do so, Allah continues in Surah Al-Hashr, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And be not like those who are oblivious or forgot about Allah, as if there is no, as if Allah is not there to see what we are doing, and whom He therefore causes to be oblivious of what is good for their own selves in the day of judgment. You forgot about Allah in this life, in the hereafter, Allah will not put you where you want it to be, which is heaven. You will be going to a place where you don't want to go. So examining oneself and calling oneself to account is evidence of one's intelligence, actually, like our scholars teach us, and aspiration for things that may lead one to happiness and success. Even if we don't attain happiness here because of problems or whatever is the causes behind it, we will attain to the happiness in the life hereafter as a reward for our patience and for attaining self-refinement in this life. So be God conscious and eagerly continue to examine yourself sincerely. Be truthful to yourself, like Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us. You must inevitably reflect on what has passed, determine to rectify it, and have a constructive plan for the remaining days of your lives. So whenever you have a hardship, remember that you have not thanked Allah enough. You were rebellious to Allah. And you are sinking or drowning in your sins. Unfortunately, and I'm still talking about faith and atheism at Danbury Masjid. And a lot of the Muslims leaving the realm of Islam by testing their faith, and testing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa la'iyadu billah. They skip prayers, for example, and want to see what happens to them. They skip their salah and want to see what happens to them. They go and drink and want to see what happens to them. If nothing happens to them, that means all this mumbo jumbo stuff that we are being taught is just grandma stories or grandma fairy tale stories, and we don't have to follow. Okay? And so based on that, they read the limb of Islam. They don't understand that Allah explains in Surah Al-Baqarah that there are people, as a punishment for them, Allah makes them surrounded with their own sins. The word Allah uses is ahatat. If He wants to have His wrath on someone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will surround him, will make him drown or her in his or her own sins. To the degree they think they are doing good, and they don't understand that they are living a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they might live fine in this life, but in the hereafter, or as soon as they hit the grave, it's all done for them. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, in many verses, in different narrations, but I'll read the one from Surah Fussilat, chapter 41, verse 46. من عمل صالحا فلنفسه ومن أساء فعليها وما ربك بظلام للعبيد. Whosoever does righteous good deeds, it is for the benefit of his own self. And whoever does evil, it is against his own self. And your Lord is not at all unjust to his slaves. What Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us in authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim, من سن في الإسلام سنة حسنة فله أجرها وأجر من عمل بها بعد من غير أن ينقص من أجورهم شيء ومن سن في الإسلام سنة سيئة كان عليه وزرها ووزر من عمل بها من غير أن ينقص من أوزارهم شيء. He who sets a good example in Islam, there is a reward for him for this act of goodness, and reward of that also who acted according to it subsequently, without any deduction from their rewards. Whoever sets in Islam an evil example, there is upon him the burden of that evil, and the burden of him also who acted upon it subsequently, without any deduction from their burden. So it's up to you what do you want to teach. It's up to you what do you want to have your kids see in you and follow. If they follow your righteous good deeds, they will be rewarded accordingly, and you will have their reward also. But if you want them to follow your bad deeds, they will have their own bad deeds, but you will also have take some of their bad deeds on you. So self-monitoring, especially we finish Ramadan in the summertime, and we all go on vacation, and our faith level goes and nosedive for a lot of us, and we try to stay away from the masajid. The reason the scholars advise us to go always, at least even if it's once a week, so that to the masajid, so that we surround ourselves with people who remind us right away of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if our faith level goes down, just being surrounded with Muslims who are God conscious will bring us back on track and make us self accountable to ourselves and correct any bad actions that we've done. And I remind myself first and foremost, and you, with the hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, of two words, heavy in the scale of good deeds and light on the tongue, and that is to say Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim, to say it at least 100 times a day. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Ask Allah for forgiveness. He is the most forgiving, the most merciful.